Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening and your interest in Belton ISD. Hope you've enjoyed our student showcase tonight by the Lake Belton Middle School Jazz Band. Well, what a jazz session that was, guys, right? You guys sound like professionals. The time is now 6:19, and the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a regular board meeting on Monday, November 13, 2023, in the Pittenger Fine Arts Center located at 400 North Wall Street, Belton, Texas. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our live stream viewers to this meeting. As the Belton ISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. That management tool is in the hands of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees held in public, not a public meeting. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items may not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. This meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. These proceedings are being live streamed on BISD's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the district's website in the days following tonight's meeting. For the video to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in the silent mode. If you would, please rise for a moment of silent prayer or meditation. Please remain standing as our students from the Chisholm Trail Elementary School lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and honors to the Texas flag.
Good evening, board. If I could have Olivia and Isabella come up here. Isabella is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Olivia is going to lead us in the Texas Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge of allegiance to the Texas, one state under God and one indivisible.
Recognitions is the first item on the agenda. We'll now turn it over to our communications team to lead us with that.
Thank you, board, and all of our honorees here. It sure is a pleasure having you with us tonight. Students, you and staff are going to be called up in groups, and you're going to take a picture with the Board of Trustees over here. Normally we do it in the center, but tonight we're going to do it over there where Emily is standing over there. And students, we ask that you not leave until y'all are dismissed by Board President Mr. Manuel Alcozer. But yes, now if I could have our Chisholm Trail students back up here. Briefly, I want to tell y'all a little bit about these two. They did a fantastic job. Olivia, her favorite subject is science because she loves learning and magnets and movement. Outside of school, she loves arts and crafts and swimming, and Olivia especially loves coloring. Her friends would say she's a good friend, and they really appreciate her. And Isabella's favorite subjects in school are reading and writing, and she's been doing that even since she was a little girl when her mom was buying her learning toys, which I love. Outside of school, she enjoys playing with her friends and playing on her phone, and her friends would say she's smart, creative, and supportive. Good job, girls. Would y'all go over there and take a picture? Fantastic. Good job. Our next showcase is you guys right here. Y'all did such a fantastic job. As Mr. Alcozer already said, this is the Lake Belton Middle School Jazz Band. And if you guys would stand and go over there towards the board. Now, you don't need me to tell you that this is an extremely talented group of musicians. Last spring, all of the judges at the Temple Jazz Festival gave them superior ratings. And just a couple of weeks ago, they competed at region auditions, and Lake Belton Middle School had 34 students make that band, and about half of those students are from the Lake Belton Middle School Jazz Band. That's how good they are. Congratulations, guys. And I would be remiss to say that they are under the direction of Mr. Grant Shane, and he did a fantastic job. So thank y'all for being here. We'll give them just a minute to get back to their seats. I know it's tricky with their instruments. Our next recognition tonight is we're super proud to have a Belton High School student, Miss Lena Cook. She's been recognized as a National Merit Commended Scholar. And that's a... As you know, that is a tremendous honor. Only 5% of the nation's scores on the PSAT earn this distinction, so Lena is one of 34,000 in the United States. So congratulations, Lena. And tonight, how special is tonight that we get to celebrate so many musical talents, but it's my pleasure to announce that for the third time in 4 years, the Lake Belton High School Stampede Marching Band qualified to compete at the State UIL Marching Competition at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. And this is after they placed second at the UIL Area D contest in Pflugerville, and in the end they came 24th in Texas, and they represented our community extremely well, and we are incredibly proud of them. Congratulations, guys. And I should mention that they are under the direction of Bobby Yerrigan, Craig George, Jacob Guerrero, Grant Shane, and Jesse Arbalay. Our next recognition is our Temple Rotary Educator of the Month, and that is Miss Annie Hasselback. She is being recognized for the Temple Rotary Club's October Educator of the Month, and she is currently a 4th grade teacher at Burrell Elementary. Her principal, Julie Manley, says that she really has a passion for teaching and reading, and she loves to share that passion with her. Julie says it's been an honor to get to know her this year, and she can't wait to watch her to continue to thrive in BISD. So thank you for being here. Congratulations. And our department showcase for this evening is none other than our amazing teaching and learning department under the direction of Assistant Superintendent, Miss Gabby Nino. This group includes our staff that support instructional learning, professional learning, and core academic areas. They provide oversight for students who are receiving care for being in the homeless population or foster care. They're English learners, gifted and talented, advanced academics, career, technology, and education, and students who are served through 504 or special education programs. They are the bedrock of Belton ISD, and I am so proud to get to honor them this evening. Congratulations, teaching and learning team. This is a rowdy group. Our final recognition for the night is a very important one. We are thrilled tonight to get to honor the Chambers of Commerce from both the Belton area and the City of Temple, because they have shown their unwavering support for Belton ISD's legislative priorities, and we sincerely appreciate their partnership. Working together, we're going to make this community stronger, and we are honored to recognize them tonight.
All right, another round of applause for these students, staff, and community partners. You heard it. Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Let me say it again. Let's have another round of applause for these students, staff, and community partners. Okay, now that recognitions have concluded, let's take a short break so we can allow these students to get all these things out of here so we can continue on with the business.
Good job, Jen. Good job, Broncos. Woo! That was outstanding. Nice job. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Do it right now. Hey, Bobby. I just wanted to let you know. It was really cool. Good job, y'all. Thank you. Appreciate you. That was outstanding. Mr. President, while this is not a department recognition, I want to recognize our technology department for being flexible with us so that we could have a band come do the performance tonight. So special thanks to Corey and Frank and Steve for making this work for us. We appreciate y'all. Because we really should open with a band performance like that every time.
Yeah.
Are we ready? All right. Next on the agenda are public comments. In the course of policy BED local, we will take public comments regarding items on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, and comments regarding non-agenda items will be heard at the end of the meeting to allow the board to conduct the business of the district. Do we have any, Becca? None. All right. Moving on to item number 4, there being no public comments. Go 5, maximize our use of resources for both current priorities and plans for the future. And Aaron, I believe you've got the floor.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to facilitate a short discussion on Goal 5, and I won't repeat that because it's right in front of you. But we actually just got out of a workshop, I think, that we focused heavily on Goal 5. But there's a word in there that I wanted us to just kind of focus on for a minute, and that's maximize. And maximize means to get the best possible use of something, whether it's a resource or a physical space. So I think for this goal, we're focusing on getting the best use of something for the here and now, but also being proactive and looking ahead, whether it's in a year, 5 years, or 10 years. So a couple of reasons why I think this is important, and then I've got a couple of questions that I want you guys to answer. First of all, and I'm just going to kind of really talk about physical space, because I think that that's probably one of the most critical things that we can talk about in Goal 5 for the success of one's education, whether it's a classroom, a science lab, a welding shop, a playing field, or an auditorium. These spaces are always being used, and they're always going to be used, especially since we are a growing district. I would easily compare this to owning a home, right? We take care of them because we need them to function for our needs for right now, but also for our future. And I think that it's important that we also spent some time in our workshop a while ago focusing on our facilities, and especially the work of our long-range facility planning team. I think that was, I'm really proud of the work that that team is doing, just giving us some guiding work on the needs of our district. But secondly, I think that this goal is important because it's important to note that as public schools, we are entrusted with the funds from our local taxpayers, as well as at the state and federal levels. So I think we ought to continuously be striving to be good stewards of those funds, which we need because that's what helps us maximize the best use of anything that we have. And then, of course, seeing that, Texas, we pride ourselves as being in the top 10 for economies, but we're in the bottom 10 for funding education. So we have to be very thoughtful in every penny that we spend. And so I think it's important that we do use the best use of our current priorities and then our future. And so I think one example, and then I'll get to a couple of questions and I'll let you guys take it over. I think one example of this is our 2022 bond, right? We see this goal played out in the building of our 2 schools that are coming, especially Burrell. It's coming up very soon. We're excited about that for them. But also those upgrades to Lake Belton Middle School, Belton High School, and Southwest, as well as those safety and technology needs. So my question to you, and I've got a couple of questions, you can answer any or all of them. In what specific ways have you observed, especially some of you have been on longer than I have, what ways have you observed the district working towards this goal? Or besides the physical spaces, what are some maybe other resources that can be focused on in this goal that we're working towards maximizing? Or what does this goal just mean to you as a trustee?
Who wants to go first?
Well, Aaron, I get that none of us volunteered to talk about this, but I love how you're engaging us. This is awesome. Tricky. So, I think that the best way to explain what you're asking is just to look at what we've done to prepare for the growth. And you said you were focusing on the word maximize. I'd like to also focus on the word prepare, because we have to plan and prepare for all the students that are coming. We listen all the time to how fast we're growing, and we're preparing for that growth. So we've all been able to witness the new schools that are coming, the new additions that are happening, the renovations. So just kind of regurgitating what you've already said, we can all speak to that because we witness it. We plan for that, and we prepare for that.
Hey, Janet.
So one of the things we heard today from Mike Morgan was how often now when we purchase things, we make sure that it's something that it could be used in multiple facilities so that we can spread those resources out and not have to reinvent the wheel every single time we have we try to make it standardized. All of our ACs, all of our, try to make things as standard as they can so that they can be used across the school district. And I know we've been doing that for the last several years to maximize our budget, make sure that we don't overspend and be fiscal stewards of the taxpayer money. I've always appreciated that about this district. And I would also say that we do a really good job with human resources and being good stewards of that. One of the examples, and maybe this is a stretch, but I don't really think it is how we have a cohort of students that are going to go over to Burrell, and we're making sure that those students are already with those teachers and already with their resources, and they're already going to be ready to go and then have the time to prepare at their new school and be ready. And those kids aren't going to be fish out of water, not knowing who they are, not knowing who their teachers are or who their new friends are. It's all just going to be seamless, and those are the things that we've planned for early on because we have a great team who helps with that. So that's just a couple of examples.
Yeah, I'm going to take the people aspect of it too, right? We started out talking about facilities, but in public schools in Texas, it's not uncommon for, right, we are in the services business, right? I mean, we're a people business. We don't build stuff, right? And so the largest part of our maintenance and operations budget is our people, right? And so in the state of Texas, it's not uncommon for that to take up somewhere between 80% and maybe just under 90% of a school district's budget, right? Their maintenance and operations budget. For us, I think we're about, 84%? And so this is our single biggest M&O expense. And so sort of maximizing the use of those resources and planning those resources for the future, that's like the one biggest thing that we can do, right? And how have we done that? How do we give back to our people, right, to keep the people, right? Because it's cheaper to keep people, right, than it is to go out and get new people. And so one great example, I always love to talk about the executive director positions for executive leadership, right? So the investment in those positions that we made, right, are investments in all the principals, right, that we have underneath them, which then in turn flows down to the assistant principals, right? Which then flows down to the teachers on the campus, right? And yes, we added 2 new positions when we did that, but those positions pay off, right? 1,000 times over with every single teacher, between them and every single teacher in the classroom. So, we got to look at the people aspect of it too. It's really easy to look at the facilities piece of it, but I think we've done a lot of great things from a cultural perspective too, to make sure that we're using those dollars wisely and trying to grow and keep our staff.
Anyone else? Great comments. Thank you, Aaron. Any other questions for us? Those are good. Thank you. All right. Item 5, action items. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the award of RFP number 2310-750-328 for the district-wide access control and camera system improvements bond project.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mike Morgan is going to give you a brief overview. We're thankful for this item that was approved in our bond election. And so we are continuing to fulfill the plans of our 2022 bond, and safety and security for our students and our staff and our school system is extremely important. So Mike will talk to you a little bit about this exact item and ask you for some action at the end.
Thank you, Dr. Smith and Mr. Alcozer. As Matt said, this is part of our $6 billion investment in safety and security items as part of our 2022 bond projects. A district-wide assessment was conducted to add access control to all campuses and upgrade video cameras and systems at selected campuses. We had a process. We went out for an RFP. It was released on October 8th, 2023, and 7 qualified proposals were received on or before October 24th, 2023. The RFP was evaluated against a weighted criteria that included pricing, the ability to execute and perform, the ability to meet our technology requirements, project support, and references. Tonight, I come to you and ask that you authorize the superintendent to negotiate and execute a contract with Brycom LLC to proceed with the project of providing access control and camera upgrades for the district for a total not to exceed $1.6 million.
Board, are there any follow-up questions for Mike? No questions. Do we have a motion to approve the award of RFP number 2310-750-328 for district-wide access control and camera systems improvements bond project? Mr. Norwood, do I have a second? Ms. Bass? Any additional discussion for Mike amongst us? None? All right.
Thank you.
All in favor, raise your hand. That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That concludes our action items this evening. Next on the agenda are reports. Dr. Smith?
Mike got a little excited there. He took off before you voted, so we're thankful for your action on that one, and we're excited to get that project underway. I'd like to welcome Gabby Nino up tonight. One of the things that's important that we present on every year are new courses that are offered to our students. But one of the requests we had from board members over the past year was the question, how do we get to this point? How do we get to a point where we're approving new courses as a board of trustees? So tonight, Gabby is going to provide for you all an overview of the new course approval process so that you know how we get to the ultimate product that we bring to you. We are not asking for any action on this item tonight. This is just a process report to familiarize you with how we get to the final recommendations for these courses.
Good evening, board. Thank you for having me tonight to discuss this new course approval process for Belton ISD. As Dr. Smith said, we are coming to you in a different approach this school year. We would typically just come to you and say, will you approve these courses that we're proposing? But we really want you all to have knowledge of the process that we go through to get to that point where we ask for your approval. And so that's what I'll share with you tonight. A key partner for me in this work is Tiffany Summerfield, our Director of Academic Advising and Counseling. And so she'll be available to answer any questions if we have them. One of the very first things that we do when we are considering a course is what's the intent or the why behind us considering that course. There might be 2 entry points to this conversation. Either there's an interest. Let's say a student group has expressed interest, a teacher, a principal. We want to offer something new to our students. So that would be a want. Or we might also have a need. For example, our standards have changed, our TEKS have changed. One that you all experienced this year was we came to you in August and asked approval for a new course title because some of the guidelines from the Texas Education Agency had changed. So the entry points to this conversation come from either a need or a want with some of those examples that I described. What I want to share with you all is that regardless of whether it was a need or a mandate or something that we want, we're always going to run it through the filter of our vision, values, and beliefs. And what are the opportunities that come to our students as a result of having access to this course? When we're considering a course, we just plop the name of the course right down in the middle, we've got typical considerations that we're going to walk through. Regardless of whether it's a need or a want, we're going to ask ourselves, what are the instructional resources required? How does it align to standards already in place? What are some of the tools that we might need to provide in order to fulfill this course? How does it align to courses that we already offer? And can we use those resources there? Am I confusing, Mr. Moore? Then we're also going to consider what are the staffing needs. So I want to be very clear. If we add a new course, it does not necessarily mean that we are adding new staff members, but we are going to consider the implications of that course on our staff. Do we already have a staff member who is certified to teach this course that could add an additional one? Are there additional certifications that are needed? Maybe there is a need for a new staff member, but that is not always the case. And so we want to consider the staffing implications when thinking about a new course. Some questions we might ask ourselves are facilities implications. Is our space designed to support this learning? I'll give an example of a wrestling course that we are considering. Do we have the space and the mats that we need in order for our students to engage in this experience? And if not, again, what are the implications of that with the resources and cost and things that we would need to add? And then the final consideration that we're going to think about is the professional learning needs for our staff who will be implementing the instruction. And that means both the learning needs right now, like the just-in-time learning needs, and what will be needed over time across the campuses that would be implementing the course or within a single facility that might, or building that might be implementing. We have some phases to this process that typically begin in September. The reason I said typically is because we want to always have general processes in place with recognition that there are sometimes outliers. For example, the one that I brought to you all in August for consideration. But in September, we start an input process where Ms. Summerfield will share that we have entered this input phase with campus leaders as well as department directors, and we have a form that's filled out that takes individuals through a thoughtful consideration process. So that input process begins in September, and then in October, the ideas for new courses are submitted for review and any clarification that might be needed based on that submission. During this month of November, we'll review those course proposals in a collaborative way. And I am proud to say that this is a place that we are strengthening process. If you go back to those considerations around instructional resources, staff, facilities, we are bringing more individuals to the table to have those discussions. For example, Mr. Schiller and his team. If we're talking about staffing implications, we need to have them at the table for that conversation to make sure that we're considering all aspects. And so that will happen in November with us bringing to you all our recommendations in December for approval. One of the other places that we're really focusing on strengthening is the after approval. So just because you say yes doesn't mean our planning stops. And so Tiffany has worked really hard on articulating the process post your approval. Beginning in January, we'll start talking about implementation of the courses that are approved. And this really, we've kind of chunked it into 3 phases of communication, being awareness, cataloging, and advising. As soon as we have approval, we're going to go back to those individuals who submitted the recommendations, communicate that it's approved, but also go to the campus and make sure that they understand the full implementation plan, begin communicating with students and families that courses have been adopted. We'll go through a technical piece of adding it to our course catalog and PEAMS coding that gives us credit for those courses. And then the most important part, advising with students. So really strengthening our academic advising with students, making sure that they are aware of the availability and that we are securing them with courses that are of high interest for them and will also yield high outcomes for them as they're planning for their future. So again, our communication, we're really focusing on awareness, cataloging, and advising of students. Do you all have any questions for me about the process for course approval? Ms. Lee?
So as far as proposals or recommendations that come to you, do they typically come from a state level, national level? Do you get it from teachers who are hearing things, or students or parents? How does it mostly, or what's the common way that you guys hear about a new course and learn about it?
So what it could be is all of the above. And just in this short time that I've been in this role, I've experienced all three that you named, meaning the state requirements that have shifted from TEA. Especially with CTE, we have innovative courses added, or just the requirements of a course change. We have some teachers who are interested in adding an advanced placement course, and so it's come from the teacher level. And then we also have some program level directors who are interested in adding courses. We have a coach right now that I'm super excited about, a course that he's proposing. You may or may not be aware that we have a shortage of referees in the area supporting sports. And so one of our coaches wants to make that an opportunity for students to learn the skill of refereeing. We have a curriculum available for us to explore. So it could come from any of those.
Anyone else? Mr. Norwood, do you have okay. Okay, thank you, Gabby.
Thank you.
Board, so next month, we will be bringing you back some potential new course approvals. So now you know a little bit of history behind the process that you've had and that our team goes through, and we'll be bringing you some potential new courses next month. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
All right, I'll keep going. We will continue to have Gabby up here, and Gabby's not going to ask Siri for help this time, I don't think.
I might ask Mr. Morgan for help.
We're going to have fun with that one for a while, I think. I'm glad to have Gabby, Ben, and Denise here tonight. And monthly, we bring you an academic progress report. As Chris mentioned in his comments earlier this evening, the investment in leadership development in our system with Ben and Denise's positions, and the investment of our teaching and learning department, whom we recognize tonight, is a big deal for our system. We believe that if we can create the conditions for our teachers to thrive, they can create the conditions for our students to thrive. And so these three individuals are very instrumental in helping us make that happen, and this is their monthly academic progress report for y'all.
Thank you. So our purpose this evening, myself, Ben, and Denise, who I slip now often and say Benice, try to say Gabanice sometimes, but we're here to report on the progress academically that we've been partnering closely on, and we'll highlight specifically some of our investment in experiences in critical thinking in our classrooms across the district. One of the things that I am so proud of is the relationship and partnership that the three of us have built and continue to grow in aligning our practices with each other in support of our campuses and our principals and our teachers. There's several areas that we really are invested in, and we would put those into process investment, some focus. And I'm going to highlight three of those for you all this evening, starting with strengthening the system capacity to ensure high-quality teaching and learning. Something about the way Ms. Bass described maximizing resources really resonated with me as it aligns to this conversation tonight. We've talked over the last 3 years, specifically through the role of Executive Director of School Leadership, about the research that supports the importance of principal leadership on campuses. If we think about teachers in classrooms, and we've talked many times about the most important role is that teacher, McCrell, who has supported our research, also identifies that in order for a teacher to be most effective, the key indicator, the number one indicator, is the curriculum that they have in front of them. And so that is my key role and my team, is to make sure that the highest quality curriculum and instructional resources are in front of our teachers every day so that they can use their expertise to design experience for students that are the highest quality. So when we talk about system capacity, yes, it is investing in our teachers, but it's building the processes and tools that ensure we have capacity across our system that they are able to deliver the highest quality for their students in the classroom. And so we've really focused on improving our curriculum resources. I talked to you recently about prioritizing standards, narrowing the scope so that we can maximize our teachers and the resource that they are to students, try to narrow the scope for them on the most high-yield, important work. That will allow us to minimize the variability across our classrooms, which is a shared focus for us. The standards that our teachers have don't change. The students in front of them might, and their approaches to those students might change, and we need personalization. But if our job is to minimize variability in experiences, then they have to have those highest quality tools in front of them. And that's been a focus for us in building processes. And finally, we've been focused on increasing opportunities for students to engage in critical thinking across our system. I want to be very clear. We have fantastic things happening in our classrooms with our teachers. We see critical thinking happening in our classrooms. You all have highlighted those experiences. Our focus is growing critical thinking across our system with our students. And so we've worked very hard to define what that is, starting with our journey of a graduate competency. We have a definition that we created as a community, and then we've been working on building that out into the elements of critical thinking at both the student and teacher level. And so these are the areas that we've been focusing on together that they will build on this evening.
Gabby, can I add one thing?
Yes.
On board on the second item that she talked about, minimize variability for each and every. One of the most important things I think that we need to stress in this is that we are not saying that every classroom will look exactly the same, sound exactly the same. Why? Because you have different students in those classrooms. We respect the professionalism of a classroom teacher. The thing that we want to minimize is the variability and quality of the classroom experience. And so we want it to be an equal level of quality when you're in Algebra 1 in one side of the hallway to Algebra 1 in the other side of the hallway. And so I just want to be deliberate about saying the teacher professionalism and voice and how they teach in the classroom is something that's extremely important to us. Our job is to ensure that they have the skill and the materials and the support and the training to ensure that the quality, no matter what approach they need to take, the quality is at the highest level.
And so I think it's really important that we talk about data and what kind of data we use. And it's important for you to know that we use both qualitative and quantitative data. That's the only way we can really get a thorough picture of what's going on in our classrooms across the district and across each and every campus. And so one of the ways we do that, one of the most important qualitative measures we utilize is Ben and I regularly walk campuses with principals. We go in and out of classrooms, and we're gathering information that tells us about critical thinking that's occurring in the classrooms. We're looking for things such as the opportunities for students to have discourse with one another, with discourse with their teacher, the level of rigor in the classroom, opportunities for students to be interested and engaged in what they're learning, and for teachers to be asking open-ended questions that are the kind that are really generating that kind of conversation that leads to critical thinking. And when we do that, we're collecting these notes, and it serves as a form of qualitative data over time. We're looking at that information, looking for what kind of trends are we seeing, where are there opportunities for a continued growth, and where are we seeing really great pockets of critical thinking actually already occurring in the classrooms that we can build upon and spread that to other teachers. And so when we're doing that, after we're done walking campuses with the principals, we immediately come back and help the principal really determine their next actions. And that could be, we're going to go back and celebrate those teachers for what we saw in that classroom. Maybe we're going to say to the teacher, we really would like for you to provide some professional development for your peers so that we can take what's happening in your classroom and spread it across the campus or even across the district. Sometimes it's just a small tweak. So maybe there was something that a principal can offer that would just be a small tweak to level up a task, or actually maybe even go back and ask a teacher a question for them to reflect upon. That qualitative data is also important as teams have come together in the campus to do intentional planning. It's only when intentional planning occurs that we have the kind of learning experiences that we're hoping to see across every classroom. So they're thinking about, well, what did we see when we were in classrooms, and then what does our quantitative data also tell us? And using both of those pieces of information, the principal is part of the team, along with teachers and instructional coaches, listening, asking questions, collaborating, as the teams are really being intentional about planning for rigorous activities, open-ended questions that are going to maximize the student discourse, student thinking, engaging them in activities that will truly lead to critical thinking. And finally, we do work with our principals to review quantitative data, testing data. And we do that using a protocol where we're talking about what do we notice in this data? What do we wonder about when we look at this data? What are our next action steps? And so some of the assessments that we look at, Star Renaissance data, we look at district common assessments. Teachers and principals engage in a similar kind of process with campus-specific assessments. And then always when we go through one of these protocols, we're thinking about what specifically do we need to do for each and every student. In some cases, do we need to provide some kind of an intervention to help close a gap? Sometimes it's an enrichment experience. So we use multiple forms of data to give us the true full picture of critical thinking, because we don't feel like assessment data alone gives us that picture.
Awesome. So to reiterate what Gabby and Denise were saying is that it's a collective effort for us. We can't do it alone. Our principals can't do it alone. Our teachers can't do it alone. It takes everybody in our system working together, aligned with our work around critical thinking. So that means that our principals, our assistant principals, our content leads, our instructional coaches, and our teachers are all learning around what critical thinking means to our district and what that should look like in the classroom. And so we are super, super proud of these groups of individuals as they have invested in their time in learning around what critical thinking is that we can pour into our kids. And so what's next? So we want to take a deeper dive into what critical thinking is defined by our community through Journey of a Graduate competencies. Specifically, we want everyone in our organization, we want them to have a strengthened knowledge of what it means to critically think in Belton ISD, and also the why and purpose behind critical thinking. Why is it relevant to our kids? And why is that so important to them to leave with that skill beyond high school, whether it be in their career choice, whether it be the workforce or college? We know that they have to be problem solvers and they have to be critical thinkers. And so it's so important that we continue to develop that. More specifically, we're going to continue to work side by side with our principals along with teaching and learning to make sure that we are developing high quality instruction. And that means that our principals have to support our teachers in that capacity. We have to continue to build up our teachers so they can deliver instruction that allows our kids to practice those elements that Gabby mentioned earlier as defined by our critical thinking definition. That means that our kids are asking good questions for inquiry. They're analyzing information. They're evaluating arguments of others. They're drawing conclusions, and they are strong communicators that are sharing their ideas and building on each other's ideas, which communication, by the way, is another Journey of a Graduate competency. And we're super proud of our principals because they've really prioritized that in their work at each of our campuses this semester. And so finally, those elements that I just mentioned, it's also important to note that those are a product of the learning that we've done with our principals, our assistant principals, our instructional coaches, and our content leads. So as a result of that learning, they came up with those elements. Again, the questions, the analyzation, the evaluation, the drawing conclusions, and the communication pieces, they felt were essential and really aligned with that definition of critical thinking in Belton ISD. And so to close, as you visit our classrooms now and throughout the rest of the school year, we hope that you see progression in this work and that you see an increase in opportunities for kids to dive into these critical thinking elements. It's important to us, and it's important that we continue to transform those learning experiences for our kids. So with that, do y'all have any questions?
Any questions for the team?
I think this is awesome. And of course, critical thinking is everything. It's learning how to make decisions and think at a higher level and be successful in life. I was having a discussion with some teachers the other day that had nothing to do with this, and it dawned on me that this is something that we probably need to explore in regard to critical thinking too. It's those life skill gaps. Sometimes kids at all ages, all the way from little to big, kind of turn their learning over to other people in regard to the decisions that they make going forward, even on a daily basis or a moment by moment basis. Like, what am I supposed to do next? What book am I supposed to get out? Oh, I was absent. Should I, what's the logical thing to do here? I mean, lots of these things are critical thinking, and I think outside of the academic realm, I would encourage you to probably help our teachers find ways to get our students to think critically in their own life and in every little aspect of their day, so that they're making good decisions for themselves and really thinking about the why behind all of that.
Very good point, Janet. Chris?
Hey, thanks. What tools do we use to capture the data, right? So when we're doing walking the halls and walking the classrooms, like how do we capture that, and how do we have the ability to sort of look not just in one classroom, right, but across all the similar classrooms on that campus and across the campus, across classrooms and multiple campuses, and kind of figure out where exactly are we doing it right from a curriculum standpoint, and where maybe do we need to get back to the drawing board? Help me with that.
Yeah, excellent question. Well, one way we do that is through the walkthroughs that Denise talked about. It's important that not only are we capturing that data, but principals are building the capacity of their assistant principals and their instructional coaches. And so they're developing processes on their campus to calibrate that. So when they're collecting data in their classrooms on their campuses, what are they noticing? What are they seeing? And then how are they, based off those recognitions, how are they building up their teachers around where the deficiencies or the gaps are? Another really important tool that we've developed, super excited about, which is, again, a product of the learning that our principals, our assistant principals, our ICs, and our content leads help develop, is a tool, a survey tool specific for that. So it allows us to capture some data specifically around those 5 elements that I discussed. And we actually just completed that this last week. And so we're going to be sharing that data starting tomorrow with our principals. And so that gives us a baseline of where we're at around critical thinking. And we'll continue to use that data, share it out with our campuses so that we can improve and build on that.
So is this like an in-house tool? Yeah? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Anyone else?
Mr. President, if I could say just a couple of things real quickly on that. First, want to again applaud Ben and Denise and Gabby on this, and their work and their leadership is extremely important. I want to point out 2 things. One, about the classroom visits and the data gathering. This is not evaluative in any way, shape, or form. What Ben and Denise and Gabby talked to you all about was this idea of learning as a system, so learning for leading effectively in our system. We're engaged in learning constantly with principals and administrators, just like a doctor's engaged in constant learning about best practices in the medical field. We're engaged in those types of practices as well. Our data collection is really about what investments we need to make in our system for professional learning and growth. And I want to point out the difference between that and being evaluative. When we go in and collect data from a campus perspective or a district-wide perspective, our goal is to be able to do exactly what Chris said, is to be able to say, here's where we're really knocking it out of the park. We see some real great trends happening at 3rd grade across our district right now. What's standing out about that? What can we learn about it for 4th grade? Or we're seeing something really important happening at one school. What can we learn from it for another school? And then we take that information and we create learning opportunities through the likes of our Recharge Conference so that we constantly invest in our system to grow the capacity and develop the teachers and the support staff that we need for the learning experiences for kids. So I just wanted to point out that very, very publicly that when we're gathering data like this is in no way, shape, or form evaluative on the individual teacher in the classroom. We're trying to gather school, campus, grade level type data so that we can really use that to help us be better as a system.
All right, moving on to item 7C, financial report. Dr. Smith?
Trustees, we have Ms. Melissa Lafferty coming up to the podium tonight, and Melissa is going to take a first step forward. We've talked to you all briefly about what we might be able to do regarding a quarterly financial report so that we're better informing our Board of Trustees on current state of finances through the year. And so Melissa's taking our first chance at that tonight, and we appreciate her efforts in that.
All right, good evening. We're going to give this a whirl as the first quarterly financial report. And so the numbers that I'm going to be referencing tonight are going to be located in that financial report that's presented to you in the consent agenda under item 7B. So for the details of this, when you're looking through those in the consent items, that's where these numbers are coming from. We're going to focus primarily not on budget, but actual, okay? So actual revenues that are hitting right now and expenditure variances. So I'm going to basically just give you a quick financial update and kind of touch on some highlights on the 2023-24 general fund and debt service budgets. We're going to start, of course, with the general fund. That's the big kahuna. All right, and so we budget, and a lot of our budget is a projection, and then the actual starts to happen. And so we're in the early stages of the fiscal year, September and October. And as everyone is well aware, everybody has received their tax statements. And so for the month of October, we're already receiving tax collections. And some of that is also combined with some delinquent taxes from the previous year. But up to this point, as of October 31st, we've received about $5.9 million in tax collections. And just so you know, from this point until about January, we will receive about 95% of our tax collections for the year in that time frame. So our bank accounts will be flush with cash. And then as I start talking about the state revenues, I'll kind of talk you through what that looks like. In addition to those tax collections in our local revenues we've received about $500,000 in pre-K tuition and interest revenue off of our deposits. And then, of course, if you'll recall, we redeemed those 2011 stadium revenue bonds, and so those revenues are now going into the general fund. So the three of those are primarily making up that $500,000 in our local revenues. Now, for our state revenues, we've already received $32.5 million, and that's about 40% of our anticipated state allotment. And so what typically happens every year is for the months of September and October, we receive big payments from the Texas Education Agency. And that's because we're waiting on our tax collections to come in. And so we'll get two big payments at the very beginning of the year. And then once the tax collections start coming in, those payments kind of stop from TEA. And then we're able to operate through late spring up until about April or May. And at that point, TEA begins to fund us the remaining 60% of our allotment. So they kind of work that out on a cash flow basis for us. And then, of course, that goes along with the state revenue is going to be the TRS on behalf. And that is basically an entry that books when the payroll runs, and that's basically recognizing the state's contribution on behalf of our employees as the payroll hits. So what happens is it books a revenue, and then there's also an expenditure that records in the same amount. So they kind of both net each other out to zero, but it's an entry that occurs. So it's really not a cash flow issue. It's more of just an entry to recognize that revenue that we're getting on behalf of the state. And then our federal revenues, we've received about $200,000 in Medicaid reimbursements, and that's for our Medicaid eligible kids that we provide services to, and that's in the direct billing. And then we received about a little over $72,000 in a prior year impact aid payment. That makes up that federal. Moving on to the expenditures, when you look at your financial report back there in the consent agenda, there's a column to the far right that gives the percentage spent. That's what that column says. And what that is it's basically those expenditures at the functional level in comparison to what was budgeted. And so I'm just going to highlight about 5 of those functional level expenditures for you that are kind of out of variance. So right now you're 2 months into the year, so our expenditures should be spending at about approximately 16 to 18%. And as you can see here, these are well above that percentage, and there's reasons for that. And so for Function 12, which is where we budget our library expenditures, there were about 16 positions that got charged to Function 12 when they were budgeted in Function 11. And so we caught that early on, and payroll has already adjusted that. So really, they belong in Function 11, not Function 12. So that's what's pushing that function out of variance with where it should be. And then the other 4 functional expenditures, social work services, transportation, a lot of those are just payments that get paid at the very beginning of the year. So they kind of jump out there, and we spend most of that budget up front because those costs are due up in September typically. So for the social work services, you can see it's sitting at 51.2%. And what you need to know about that function is it is significantly less compared to the other functional levels. It only has about $400,000 that's budgeted there, and half of that is going to be the communities and schools payment that we made back in September. And then, of course, then there's the student transportation and plant maintenance, and that's our property casualty insurance. So they basically take care of most of those premiums. Those are paid in September, and so that's why those 2 functions are also higher than they should be. And then technology is also doing a lot of renewals. Their technology renewals are paid at the beginning of the year. So what happened, you'll see this every year at these functional levels, except for 12. They'll kind of jump out there as far as where they should be in spending because they're paid up front when you're in the month of October. All right, and then moving on to budget amendments. So you've already approved these budget amendments, so these were the ones brought to you for the months of September and October. And historically, we've been coding some professional development to Function 36 that we found, just looking at some of the expenditures. And so the business office brought you a budget amendment. I believe that one was back in September. And then we reclassed those to a Function 13 where those should be charged. And then if you'll recall, back in February, you approved the Burrell startup budget, which was about $564,000. And all of that was originally budgeted in Function 11 until we knew where all the departments were going to come in as far as, nursing supplies and technology and custodial and those kind of departments and their items. And so we moved about a little over $43,000 out of Function 11 over to those departmental budgets so that they could spend those and get Burrell ready and open to start school. And then when we're budgeting our appraisal district fees, the appraisal district sends us an estimate early on. And so we budget that, and that's kind of our projection at that point. But it came in really low this year, and so we had to move about $200,000 from the tax increment fund over to the appraisal district fees to help cover that. More than likely, we'll have to bring one for the tax increment fund because I think we'll have to still replenish that later in the year. But that doesn't get paid until late spring when we pay that one. And then, unfortunately, the biggest amendment we've brought to you is a new accounting standard that we're having. There's actually 2 of them that we're having to implement, and we're kind of struggling through. But when it comes to our copier leases, historically, those were charged out of the campus or the departmental budgets. So it hit all the different functions depending on what campus or department it was, and they just charged out. You just paid your lease payment each month, then it got charged out. Well, now these standards are requiring us to recognize those payments as principal and interest, just like it is a loan. So kind of makes sense, it's a lease, and so what we did for the 23-24 budget, rather than creating chaos in the campus and departmental budgets, we let everybody budget as they normally have, and then we brought a budget amendment to you to move those expenditures down after the fact, after everyone had budgeted. So there will be another amendment coming later for the subscription renewals that we will also have to treat the same way, where they'll have to be charged down there in Function 71. And then we'll talk quickly through debt service. We've collected about $3.2 million in tax collections. And then the $384,000 you see there in expenditures, that was the redemption of those 2011 stadium revenue bonds. That was the principal and interest over the next 2 years to pay those off. And then the other uses is basically the cash that was in the PNC depository account. So we went ahead and closed the PNC account for the 2011 stadium revenue bond and transferred that to the general fund. So you'll see it'll be uses on the debt service fund, and then when you see the general fund down at the bottom, there will be other sources. And so you'll see those two numbers offsetting each other as that money moves over. This month, we are closing the investment pool for the 2011 stadium revenue bond, and that's about $610,000 that will be moving into the general fund's investment pool. And at that point, we'll close that fund will be completely closed, and then I'll bring a budget amendment to you to recognize both of those transfers. All right, and for the next steps in the budgeting process, or just kind of as we go through our 23-24 budget, I think Clint's working on the fall submission as we speak, and so at that point, I'll take a hard look at our average daily attendance for the fall semester, and then see if we need to amend our revenues depending on how we land. So if you'll remember, we budgeted pretty conservatively on the attendance rate, and so, and I think we're down a few students, so just going to see how that kind of shakes out between the two, and I'll run that through the template in the next few weeks and see where that ends up for our state funding. And then the appraisal district, we have received our certified values. We're now collecting those taxes on those values. But what happens, and why this is important and why I have it on this slide, is that now that we are collecting our taxes, the appraisal district has to send those values into the state comptroller's office. They also certify values. And so why that's important to us is that while we're collecting on those certified values, once the comptroller has certified values, the state funding is based on what the comptroller certifies, but our collections are based on what the appraisal district certifies. So sometimes those can be in conflict sometimes, and that's where districts can get out of trouble if they don't line up accordingly. So that's important, and I get a little nervous when those are getting submitted. At my previous district, we fell out of a confidence interval, and that creates a little stress for the CFO. So that is and we will learn more about that later as to how that really works. And then, of course, we're going to start gearing up and start planning for the 24-25 budget. It's that time of year, time to start putting on the tool bag and getting after it. So we're going to start gearing up for that. All right, do y'all have any questions? Any comments?
Board, any questions for Ms. Lafferty? Oh, go ahead.
I just have a comment to say thank you and your leadership and your team. I know it takes a lot of people to look at a lot of these numbers, and it's so complex. And so I just want to say thank you for just the thoughtful explanation into much of this. I know we can read our board packets, but to hear you give explanation just in face-to-face just really brings the meeting more impactful. And so just appreciate you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to item 7D, GKG Local First Reading Report. Dr. Smith.
Mr. Schiller is coming to you. This is a policy that we do not have in our system right now, and he'll explain a little bit about it to you. And again, this is a first reading. We're not asking for any action tonight.
Good evening. Tonight we are bringing to you GKG Local, which for our first reading, this policy matches with actual practice that's being done for volunteers currently. And so this all came about through the discussions that we had a couple of months ago with Senate Bill 763 in regards to chaplain resolutions, and TASB is recommending the adoption of this policy regarding volunteer programs before we take any actions on how to use chaplains over the next couple of months. So again, this policy really just outlines our current practice of how we're using our volunteers and the process for being a volunteer. And a lot of this information exists in GKG Legal too. It just provides clarity for a local policy. Any questions?
No questions?
Our plan would be to come back next month for a second reading. And then we would also, after this policy is adopted, we would probably take some actions on, or ask you to, we'll recommend an action on the chaplain, a resolution for chaplains.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Smith, Superintendent's report.
Sorry, I had to find my clicker. Trustees, it has been a wonderful month in Belton ISD, and I'm excited about the work that you're hearing about tonight. Again, purpose of Superintendent's report is always to give you highlights of what we've seen over the last month and what we're seeing coming up in Belton ISD. We'll go over these 5 things in some detail in the pictures as we move through things. First of all, you all know we had a Teacher of the Year in Belton ISD, and I was very happy to attend a lunch with Ms. Caitlin Kelly and Ms. Steele Hankin, our principal at Lake Belton High School. Caitlin was recognized along with educators from throughout the state that represented elementary and secondary Teachers of the Year for each region. And so imagine a room where you have some amazing educators all sitting in the same room just being applauded for their work, and we were able to sit and enjoy a meal together and hear stories of these outstanding teachers throughout the state. We're thankful for Caitlin, and we know that the efforts are not just limited to Caitlin in the classroom. We have amazing teachers doing phenomenal things throughout our system on a regular basis, and we couldn't be more proud of their work. Next one, the picture that you see there is our Custodians Appreciation Lunch. We were able to spend a little bit of time with our custodians throughout the district on Monday, the 30th of October, and that was a day of professional learning, and our custodians were engaged in professional learning that day. So I'm thankful to Keith Cook, Mike Morgan, Erica and Becca who made this possible, but what we did is we fed them a nice lunch and recognized the outstanding work that our custodians do in our buildings throughout our school district. One of the things to note that Mike mentioned in the work session was we did a facilities assessment a number of years ago now. In that facilities assessment, it was recognized the outstanding work that our custodians and our maintenance department do to keep even our oldest facilities at a standard that everyone can be proud of. So we're extremely grateful for their continued work in our school district. Aaron was there to say a thank you to them as well and to enjoy a little bit of lunch with them all. And we're grateful for the hard work that you see from our custodians across the district. One of the things we're doing a little bit differently this year, because I realized I might not be that great at managing a classroom with high school students, middle school students, and elementary students all in the same room. We changed the Superintendent Student Advisory Council slightly this year so that when we meet face-to-face in a group setting, we only do that with the high school students. What we're doing is I'm paying a visit to every one of the other schools to meet with leaders, student leaders at those schools to hear their perspective on 3 important questions. 1, what do you love the most about your school? 2, what is it that exceptional learning means to you? Like if something is really exceptional in your classroom, what does that mean? What does it look like? What does it sound like? And then finally, what else do you want the superintendent to know? And I've had some outstanding opportunities to not only have our high school students together with Melinda and Ben and Gabby did some great work with our high school students, but to hear some voices of our elementary and middle school students as well. We're gathering that data just like we have in every type of advisory setting that we create for our students, and we'll use that data for thoughtful improvement planning for the future. I do have to share one, I believe she was a kindergartner at one of our elementary schools. I asked her what would be exceptional learning at her school, and she very clearly told me that she thought a pool filled with candy would be exceptional at her school. And so you never know what kind of answers you're gonna get, and I appreciate her for being passionate about candy. Halloween might have had something to do with that in the middle there, but it was, it's wonderful to hear the voices of our students, and I can also tell you, they are extremely insightful no matter the age of the student. If you really listen to the song beneath the words from our kids, I think that you can really gain some valuable information about our system, and we're thankful for them. Next, I want to point out that we've been working diligently with a group of leaders throughout our system to explicitly talk about and define what we mean by leadership in our school district. We know as a growing school district, we will continue to have vacancies in our system as we add new schools, as we have retirements, as we have people who might move out of state. We will constantly have the need for new people to step into leadership positions. And our hope is that by very clearly defining what we mean by leadership in our system and then creating a system to support that development, we will have a bench of ready leaders in our system when those vacancies are created. So imagine an opportunity where we, in the future, open an elementary school and we have 5 outstanding applicants, already leaders from within Belton ISD. That's the goal that we're looking for to ensure we continue to develop that and create pathways of learning and professional growth in our system. This advisory group has been meeting with us to really define what leadership means in our school district and to be very explicit about what competencies are included in that leadership definition. We'll continue to keep you updated on this progress along the way, and we anticipate bringing you all some more information in the spring this year when we land that leadership definition. And then finally, I didn't have a picture of it. Over the past couple of days, I've also had the ability to do some community presentations. We were grateful to host Leadership Belton that's hosted by our chamber in the PFAC here a couple of days ago. Did a presentation with them. We also, I had the opportunity to present to the Lions Club of Temple, and I realized that they are a rowdy bunch compared to other groups that I've been with, but they were wonderful to present to as well. And then we're excited tomorrow to have our first meeting of the year with our faith-based leaders from throughout our community. Again, that faith-based community is one that's important to us to pull into our school system, and so we're excited to host that meeting tomorrow to continue to talk about the work of Belton ISD, the work of our Board of Trustees, and the work of our faith-based community and how we can support each other in creating one big red community. That's all I have for this month.
Any questions for Dr. Smith? None, all right. 7F, governance report. And let me say this before we start discussing anything that you guys want to bring up. It is during this report that we have an opportunity to share our experiences at various school and community events, recognize staff and students, and discuss opportunities for continuous education. Anyone would like to start us off? Ms. Norwood.
So 2 events that got to attend this last month. Well, I attended many, but 2 that stick out. Ms. Bass and I attended, we have the breakfast with the board, and we have different groups that come in. I've done the faith group. There's been other groups, I think PTA's had them. We have several groups, which is important. That's the partnering with parents, our community, doing what we need to do so that, it's great. They get to interact with us, and not in this type of setting, but there's no other people here now except our, staff. So it was the booster clubs. And I guess I've attended 3 or 4 of these over the year, and it was packed, right? I don't think there was an empty seat. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to bring everybody in. There was a lot of exchange of ideas, because these booster clubs, you don't think about it till you're in one, and you realize how much work they do for these kids. I'm a member of one. Most of you have been involved in them as well. I mean, these people are volunteers, and they spend countless hours doing this. And to bring them all together, I think next time we do it will be even bigger. Look at doing some stuff in the spring and the fall, because they all have the same problems. They all have the same, what do you do about this? What do you do about this? And of course, our main thing was, what can Belton ISD do to either get out of your way, to help? And there were some things we could do to bring them together. That was a great event. And, right after that, Manuel and I got to attend the meeting that was discussed during the workshop, where it was Belton ISD sitting down with City of Temple, City of Belton, all at the same table, and talked about, are there avenues for us to start working together on some things? Don't know what necessarily those are right now, but here's the fact. I'm sure at one time in Belton and Temple, they probably weren't as intertwined as it is now. But it is intertwined now. And I know they are separate cities, and I get that, and I don't want any hate mail. But we will either all succeed together, or we will stumble apart from one another. And it was a great meeting to sit down and just have those discussions with the 2 cities, because we operate in both of them. And we work with both of those, and the mayors were there. It was wonderful. A lot came out of it. And what really came out of it was they do want a partnership with us. We don't know what that looks like right now, but what does it look like to work with both cities hand in hand, because they're all of our kids. I mean, unless you're from here, you don't know when you leave Belton and you end up in Temple, and that's just the way it is, because they're all of our kids. So that'd be mine. It was a good month. So,
Janet?
So a couple of different things. Veterans breakfasts were all this week, and some of us had an opportunity to attend a few of those across the district. I guess every campus had a veterans breakfast, and I chose to go to Southwest Elementary, and I know Suzanne was there as well. That was really special to have parents come in that are active or former military with their kids and get to eat a breakfast taco, and just, it was just sweet. And the kids were proud to have their parents there with them that morning. So in addition to that, at Southwest Elementary, there is a new initiative in Belton called Education Connection, and they are a group, I guess, out of Austin. Is that correct, Matt? You would say they're out of Austin?
Yeah, this is a partnership with our faith-based leaders in our community. So it's our community members, but we were trained by people out of Austin.
Correct. And so just for me personally, the church that I attend asked our people who wanted to volunteer for this program to specifically focus in on Southwest Elementary. So I passed the background check, and I am a volunteer to get to read with Southwest Elementary students, and I have two little ones, and unfortunately, it's like, we met with them one week, then they didn't have school the next week, then I was out of town, then now they've got testing, and then it's Thanksgiving. So hopefully, once we get to December and January, we can get more on a roll, because I really, really enjoy that. And I'm hoping it'll be beneficial for kids just to have people come in, and if nothing else, know that there's adults in this community that care about them and want to see them succeed. And that's really the whole purpose of it. The only other thing I can say is I went to a community-wide event with several hundred people from across Bell County who were there just to kind of an interesting evening to listen to Karl Rove speak. He's a former Deputy Chief of Staff for George W. Bush. He's an author and a political advisor, and no matter what you think of his politics, he's just a really interesting guy and super smart. But what was really cool when you go to an event like that is all the people that are there that you can talk to, who are great supporters of our district and Temple ISD, and that's always so encouraging to know that people care about public schools. And so that's my time.
Chris?
I don't know. I feel like I didn't do.
You push band equipment.
I know. I can tell you. So I traveled for 2 weeks out of the month, but I got to tell you, I served in Bandtober. If you don't know,
I do know.
If you know band, you know Bandtober, and Bandtober has got a leave written all over it. From riding the buses to chaperone, to pushing props around and feeding kids and loading and unloading trailers, and seeing kind of firsthand, Jeff, what you were talking about with the booster clubs, right? In action. I mean, we've got such an amazing group of families and parents that support not just band, but athletic boosters and, the dance teams and everything else. Like, just serving alongside the parents that do that and are part of the groups day in and day out was just an outstanding experience. And the interaction with the kids, we've got an amazing group of kids here in Belton ISD. Right. I mean, I didn't quite know what to expect when I started riding the buses to competitions. I had this vision in my head of what that would look like, and it was nothing like what I had in my head. Just so proud of these kids in how they win, how they lose, how they suffer the agony of incorrect UIL announcements. It's just, I've saw all kinds of emotions at all levels from our parents and our students over the last month. And so full-on dad mode, that's where I was. That and experiencing the college recruiting process. And so that we are, if you haven't had a senior yet, this is it. Like, you're kind of winding up that process right now. Applications in, starting to get acceptances back, the financial aid process, all that kind of good stuff. So not as many community activities per se, but full-on dad mode. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Suzanne?
Absolutely. I too had the pleasure of going over to Southwest Elementary. I want to start off with a shout out to the receptionist over there at Southwest Elementary for just doing her job, just being vigilant and doing her job. They have a new little system where you have to scan your badge reader, and my badge is in a nice little blingy holder, as you all know. I had to take it out of there. She wasn't swayed by the fact that I was a board member. Had to take it out of there and scan it. However, we weren't in the system. And then she let us know that that's something that we'll have to figure out and do, but then I had to sign in. I'm not upset by that. I love that. She didn't care about my rhinestones. She did not care. Did not care. The other thing that I learned at Southwest Elementary is that putting chocolate milk in cereal is a thing. Those kids were putting chocolate milk in their cereal. I was like, whoa. So great opportunity to visit with kids and parents. I did a couple of more things that day. I was intentional about that particular day just because my schedule is so crazy that even though it was raining, my umbrella and I went out there and had a good time on Thursday of last week. So the other thing that I did that evening, I went to the Belton Business After Hours. That was kind of interesting. Walked in there sopping wet, looking cute, of course. So anywho, I went through there. That was nice, visiting with Randy and some other folks. And then the big, wonderful icing on my night was to go over to Miller Heights because they did American Every Day over there. The fourth graders did a phenomenal performance. Just really a nod toward the veterans in the room. They asked them to stand. They acknowledged them. Really enjoyed myself over at Miller Heights. And that's what I did, all in one rainy day.
Thank you, Suzanne. Mr. President?
A lot with Chris. I had a lot of dad duties, seeing some middle school football, but also had the joy of seeing the last couple of Belton High School wins. And this last one was pretty cold and rainy out there with Aaron and Matt, but it was a fun one for sure. And then a couple events too. Got to go for my first time to Miller Heights to see their fall festival, and then also to Lakewood for their Frenzy, which is quite the event. I'd never heard of it until this year, being a trustee, and so going to both of those on the same night was a really fun experience. Getting to see both schools and the way they celebrate there in the fall was really, really great. Veterans Day celebration also was really fun. I got to go to Lake Belton Middle School, and it was the first time they'd ever put that performance together, and it was really, really well done. And if you hadn't seen, there was a student whose father returned from overseas and she got to be reunited with her dad, and it was extremely touching. I think it caught a tear, at least from everyone there that day. And then I sat down with a handful of different veterans, some that were in Vietnam, one that was in overseas, and he teaches for us now. And so he was there because of the father of a student at Lake Belton Middle, and he served. He was at West Point, and now he teaches for us at Lake Belton High School, I think, chemistry. So extremely smart, really proud to have him represent our district as well. And then, of course, getting to go to Temple Manufacturing Day with the Chamber of Commerce over there, and then getting to hear from Buckley and Representative Shine, and, of course, all the good things that Representative Shine continues to support our district and public schools, and been really positive.
Ms. Bass?
It's been a fun month. So there's one thing that y'all haven't mentioned. Camp Champion happened since our last board meeting. And of course, I mean, I got to go and participate as a parent. But I'm just so proud of those camps that are put on. So the one that was done in October was a one night of cheer and football for our students in our system that are served in special programs. And I mean, there's just nothing about it that I could say well, let me rephrase that. Everything about it was amazing. But one thing that stood out to me that I just walked away with as a board member was I loved seeing our athletes coming from both schools together on one field to support kids in our district that just frankly it doesn't look typical to them for them to play football or cheer. But for that one night, They were all about those kids together. And so as a board member, I was just heart-filled with emotion for seeing those athletes coming together, the cheer and football athletes and coaches. And so that was really fun. And my son didn't want to participate in any of it. So he just walked around the field. So I got to watch other kids do really fun things, and it was just really neat. Did get to go to the custodian lunch, which was I'm thankful that we did that for them, because they are an integral part of our system. We can't do what we do without them. So I was just thankful to be a small little few moments of that day for them. The Booster Club lunch or breakfast was really awesome. Just hearing them share their challenges together, and then even collaborating on some ideas of what we could do. You know, maybe there is a district calendar that they could collaborate on, so that they're planning not on top of each other, but planning in line with one another. So because we are serving the same community. There was one I got to go as a mom, but of course, you know, when we have kids in the district, you still kind of go with the lens of a board member, which, you know, that's okay. But I did go to the Princess Tea, the Magic Bells. They've been putting this on for several years. And so this was probably my fifth one to go to. They do it over at North Belton Middle School. And y'all, there's probably 10, 15 princesses. They all have their own backdrop. So imagine Ariel. So that's a magic bell. She's dressed up like Ariel, head to toe. She's got a backdrop that looks like the ocean. And you can come up and you take a picture with them. And they are in character. I mean, my daughter asked, well, where's Flounder? Well, she's swimming up in the ocean. So they're in character. And so they get to interact with the magic bells. They do a performance. There's the Booster Club moms that are and dads that were there just serving us fun treats. And so it's just a really neat thing. One thing that they did do this year that we didn't participate, that they did a father-daughter princess ball that same evening. Andy didn't get to participate with that. I think the Princess Tea was enough. I don't know that Brooklyn would have done well for him that night. So. And then another thing that I'm super proud of, and I think this is a shout out to the whole district, back on October 31st, even though it was a holiday, it was a district-wide conference day for parents, which I know a lot of teachers did it on other days leading up to, but I'm proud of our district for really making that a focus for that day, bringing our parents in and really bringing to life that together we are partners with them. And so I'm just proud of the fact that we made that a priority for that day, to bring parents in. I know the district as a whole was really just integral and really making sure the community knew about that. But I think campuses did a great job too of making sure parents knew, and teachers as well, getting those sign-ups sent out so that you could go. And my kids are doing well, y'all. They're proud of them. So I just want to give a shout out to the district as a whole. I'm proud of that initiative of making that a focus and a priority.
Thank you, Erin. I attended, I guess a week ago today, a meeting, supposed to be a meeting with Congressman Carter. Unfortunately, he was not there, but one of his aides was there. I think her name is Abby. And along with me in the meeting was Dr. Ott, Bobby Ott, Superintendent Temple, Dan Posey, the president of the school board there, the president of the Salado School Board was there, the superintendent of Gerald ISD, and that is Dr. Hicks, the superintendent Michael Novotny of Salado ISD was there. And basically we were just talking about the challenges that we face, and they're facing the same challenges that we face here all the time. I probably advocated a little bit more than I probably should have. I don't know that you can do that much, but probably said some things that, well, anyway, let's just say that I was advocating for public education. Anyway, one of the things that Odd had brought up was the fact that, you know, from a federal perspective, you know, we're increasing our numbers in special ed. However, in the TISD, their funding from the feds is going down. So their numbers are going up, but the amount of funds is going down. So he had the numbers there available, and I talked to Dr. Smith about that, and I'm gonna send Abby an email telling her about that. I don't know how much more they can do for us. And one of the questions that she asked us all was, if you were a congressperson right now, what change would you like to make, or is there a bill that you would like to submit? So we all answered that question. I was the last one. So I basically said, well, I think what I would do is, from the federal perspective, I would ask for a statute to be enacted that would make it illegal for school districts, well, for the state to take money and give it to private schools without it being held to the same standards as public schools. In other words, if you're going to do that, that's illegal. If you're going to do it, then you're going to have to do it with this caveat, and that caveat is everything that applies to public schools is going to apply to private schools as well. So they applauded that. And then I don't know when Congressman Carter's ever going to, if he ever is going to come back, but I did tell Abby, I said, next time you have this, I would like to meet him and talk to him face to face about the challenges that we have in public education. I don't know that he would do anything, but the mere fact that they have offered to have a discussion is good. And then, of course, Jeff mentioned that we had attended that meeting. The other thing I'd like to do is I want to digress for just a moment. And, you know, we have the holidays approaching, and we have Thanksgiving approaching. And, of course, I have a lot of things to be grateful for. Not just thankful, but grateful. And, I mean, I sit here and I look out there and I see all you guys that are part of this team. Just like Ben said here earlier, we're a team here. And we really are. Everyone plays an integral part. And I'm so grateful for the folks that I've come in contact with, you know, your staff and your cabinet, and just all across the district. And I'm so grateful for, if I ask for anything, I mean, you guys are always willing to assist, always willing to provide information. And it makes serving on this board so much easier when you guys are so engaged with your jobs and willing to help us in any way. So I'm grateful for that. Anything from human resources, I know anything, if I ask Todd a question, boy, he tries to get the information to me as quickly as he can. Like I see Pete and Doug back there. When I go to these safety meetings, I'm thinking, man, these guys are doing a fantastic job for the district. I didn't realize it. I know Jeff went to those meetings and he talked about them. Aaron's been to those meetings. So this is all across the district, but I'm so grateful for you guys and what you do for the district, and I'm grateful for this guy. You're doing a good job. Yeah. So, and the last thing I want to say is that I remember in convocation, I was talking about how it's a privilege to serve with you guys, all of you. And I know, as I listen to the enthusiasm when you're talking about the things that you do, that's what makes this group special, right? Any of you could go out today and say, well, Jeff, Janet, you know, Chris, Aaron, Rucker, and Suzanne, any of you could go out and represent this board. You know, if you had an interview with someone, any of you could do that, and you could speak for all of us, because there is no agenda, there's no personal agenda here. Each one of you, and we have this common thread, and that's we're doing the best we can for these kids. So I think that's what makes this group special. So I just wanted to tell you guys that, because we have the, you know, holiday coming up next week, and I wanted to tell you how grateful I am for everything that you guys do. And understand that I learn from, when you guys make comments, I told this to Jeff the other day, when you guys make comments, I mean, I always learn something from you guys. Things that I don't even think about. I'm thinking, you know what, that's a pretty good point that someone just made. So that's what makes this group special. I learn a lot from you guys. So thank you. Just wanted to, that's a shout out to you folks, all right? And a shout out to our leader, because we hired this man to do a job, and I think he's doing a good job, and I want to say that publicly. So thank you, Matt. All right. Okay, that concludes this evening's reports. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull an item for discussion? No one, okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Mr. McDonald? Mr. Preston? All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That passes 7-0. Moving on to item 8, board requests for new information and/or reports. Board members, at this time, are there any requests for new information or reports from the administrative team?
A long time ago, we used to have like a little cheat sheet or booklet that told us what the different functions were for the budget. I was wondering if we could get something like that that's updated.
Dr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. That'll be an easy one. Thank you.
That's a good question, because I know Melissa brought that up today. Yeah. Okay, calendar events. As a reminder, we have the following upcoming events. And of course, those events are on your calendar that's been presented to you. There's a copy. Very quickly, November 20th to the 24th, district is closed for Thanksgiving. The 28th special board meeting at 5 p.m., that's Tuesday. And then on Monday, December 11th, board meeting workshop at 5 p.m., followed by a regular board meeting at 6:15. All right, moving forward for public comments for non-agenda items. Becca? No takers, 0, okay. There being no public comments regarding non-agenda items, we move on to item number 11, closed session. Texas Government Code subchapters D and E. The time is now 8:01, and the board will now go into closed session for consultation with attorney, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, personnel, Texas Government Code Section 551.074, student disciplinary matter, Texas Government Code Section 551.082. The time is 9:10 PM, and the board will now reconvene in open session. All action items, reports, and consent items for this evening have been addressed. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:11.